Hey, what's going on, guys? Double 18 Seth Shadow here. There isn't much big movement happening on the market for the last week. Compared to what we had talked about before, things are generally looking the same. As we move our way to set 4, we are seeing some fade on the value for Fable cards in general, including Alice. But there are some cards that are seeing a bit of a value bump for potential use in the next format, although that is very sparse. Otherwise, it's mostly just been holding amongst all the singles. So, going over a few singles that we've got for today. Our first one today is going to be Mock Knight, which, if you take a look at the base silvers that we've got here, these are still really cheap to pick up with market prices at 28 cents and 38 cents between the base and the Evo. They start off at 15 cents and have lots of listings available. However, the premium versions are in buyout mode right now, where each of them are down to 3 listings starting at $8 each, where their market prices are around $4 at this point. I anticipate that there's still going to be playability of heroes when we get to set 4, and at this point it's still one of the decks to play right now for current formats. So, Mock Knight is still one of those cards that we'll see play for some time. Trail of Light, we were talking about how players have been buying out the promo version of this one, and the price had jumped as the market price of that is $165, and it was more or less $1 or less for a while. So I wouldn't say like a heavy jump. This card is still very much available in terms of its listings and its quantities. The problem is those quantities are moving to the $2 and ultimately even the $3 range, and the card does have playability as we go along for different sorts of archetypes that may be coming later. So if you do want to pick these up for the premium foiling of it, well, it's unlikely that it can go down much further than this, and there is a listing available for $1.60 with a few copies as well. If we take a look at actual sales recently, players have been finally biting into this or I should say they have been actually, for most of February or March. We have seen prices at $2 or $3 getting bought on this premium version of the card. Ancient Alchemist, which is from set 1 and for Dirt Rune. This card is still kind of where it's always been at, where the base form is still cheap to pick up with 51 listings overall. But when we take a look at the evolved version of this card, which is always the one of value here, we're still looking at $1.50 to $2 for actual sales, while this card has listings, not as many quantity anymore, under $2, but listings are mostly sitting around the $2 mark before quantities start to pick up in value around the $4 mark here. Now, this is a gold Evo, so just keep in mind that will allow this card to retain more value overall, but it's still not too expensive at least. Phantom Howl, which is a favorite card for Abyss Rush, is still kind of holding at its current valuations. It's 15 cents base for the regular silver, but a market price of 55, which is ultimately a little lower than what it used to be, given that these two, the promo box topper along with the regular silver, used to be pretty close in value. But we take a look. We did have a spike at the end of February that just kept tapering off. Players are still buying this, but it's mostly at the 50-cent range or a little bit lower right now. And ultimately, when we take a look at the available listings, they do have not too many actually. Most of the copies available are still $1. But I feel like Aggro Abyss is losing its popularity, so there isn't as much room for players in terms of picking this up. When we think of D-Shift, we also think of Flame Destroyer, which right now we're back on a downtrend of this card since the end of February, and the market price is now 53 cents on this, where that drop falls from 57 cents, so it's not that big of a difference. And right now, when we take a look at available sales, we're looking at 40 some cents to 50 cents for the most part, so Flame Destroyer still consistently sells for under $1, but never really at the dollar mark here. And as we go along, I don't think Flame Destroyer will see as much place when it comes to future D-Shift type builds, but until we get to at least set 6, it is still probably the better candidate when it comes to D-Shift. Luminous Knight is a tech card that you can consider for aggro sword based builds, where the card is just a bronze and it still has lots of copies available, so it's not too expensive to pick up. And though the market price is showing an indication of a rise as of late, that rise is only a few cents. The card still sells for as high as 30 cents, and it seems that when players buy this, they buy them in full playsets, so it's cheap enough for players to consider that. Available listings have this card at 10 cents, or at least around it for a lot of quantities too. Even though we have a lot of listings, it's also got tons of quantities amongst those listings, so this card is still readily available and easy to pick up. Agnes Ton is... I don't know what to say about this card. It's valuable, it maintains a good amount of value, but it just keeps jumping around in terms of just how high it gets to how low it can get. Because between the base form and the Evo right now, both of them are currently underneath their current market prices. The base form is $30, and then you've got $10 on the Evolve as their lowest listings. And when you take a look at their market prices, they're 36-ish to almost $13 a piece. And then the super legendaries are still higher, but in this case, both of them are higher than their market prices. And they do have a smaller amount of listings overall. $27 for 6 listings on the super legendary of the Evo. And then the base form has 3 listings right now, starting at 45. And the signs, still not much movement on that one as we've seen before. They're both underneath their current market prices at this point. Diaa is also on a bit of a slump for its base legendary, where this card was making its way up to 15, but more listings are back on the market, and now it's underneath $10 again at $8.75 to start off its prices. And if you want to pick up the ultimate evolved version of this card, it's still $36 base with a market price of almost $50. And the super legendary of the base form is currently $15.20 at its base price, which is around the market price as well. Heavenly Aegis is also falling more in value, with 34 listings on the base form at $4 to start and a market price of $6.50. If you want the super legendary of the base form, that's also $19 with a market price of $22.23, and the Evo is still really cheap to pick up at $1 base versus the super legendary of it, which is about $14 right now. Aegis is probably going to see a bit more play with the next set, but I don't think it's going to be that much more. Archangel Rena. I had talked about how this card got bought out some time back to almost to the $10 mark, but we have listings back up here, and players have been buying this more readily at around $3 to $4. However, there is only one listing at $4 or under when you consider shipping, and after that, it's a $7 card, so we're still cut on buyout at this point for this card, but it's only the evolved version. The promo version of Angelic Barrage, the alternate art that you were able to pick up from last season's free play fights, this card has really dropped off since the initial release, where now its base price is around $7, and it does sell for around that price. I mean, it used to be in a market, the market price used to be up in the 20s, and overall listings are now, we only have a few listings underneath $10, and then it just goes back up to 15. I wouldn't anticipate you need too many of this card in the future, as normally I feel like it's just going to be a tech just to consider now. Angelic Knight might have some more value, but Barrage overall I think will just kind of hold at a lower valuation over time. And finally, we've got the promo version of Demonic Strike, which is currently sitting at $44 for its base price, and it hasn't been getting bought that readily. One player did buy this on the 20th at 44, and the current available listings have only 2 copies at 44 or around that before it just becomes a $50 plus card again. And so it's really just going to be how much. I feel like Rune is the only deck that can use this very effectively, or there is the possibility to mix it in with Hero Sword for its aggro capability, or even general aggro decks at all. But the card itself is still very far off from the original price that it had, now that we only see it get played every so often. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys later.